he really started doing this, like I said, about halfway through the season, would make an effort, go over to him and just like say, hey man, some type of words of encouragement. Like, hey, we'll get him next time. Don't worry about it. Like, hey, you may have struck out, but the next kid just hit a 2-run, a double or something like that. And you saw that other kid get over his situation almost instantaneously.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. Today we have a very special guest, former Navy SEAL Sean Matson. Also, you probably know him from Carter Max, Matt Bach, so on and so forth. Serial entrepreneur, this guy.
What's going on?
Nothing. What's going on with you?
Man, busy, that's for sure. We've been cranking away. So I just had to shove my face full of a whole bunch of breakfast tacos. Not the Mexican kind.
Well, you mean not the people
not
kind,
the Latinos.
Yeah.
not the people. Not the people. I'm not a.
What a knucklehead.
Yeah.
So it's a good place to jump from. Everything is so dumb these days. It's just. It seems like more and more people are divided into one of two camps, and that is just, I'm tired of this. I'm not going to engage anymore. Leave me alone. Let me know when it's over. And then people who are constantly trying to make partisan political points and spike the football on their opponents, right? But I what I've seen very little of are people who are just determined to make things better without regard to any political party or any kind of partisan talking point. A lot of people are doing it, but I guess maybe one of the problems is that people who just put their head down and power through and do the right thing aren't necessarily the best self-promoters, you know what I mean? Like they're so busy doing the work that they don't have time for promotion. And that's one of the things, aside from just the dialogue, the back and forth, the conversations that we have about these principles and about the state of our country in general, I think that's probably something that I'm looking to get at too, which is to find people who have their head down and they're, solving problems and don't necessarily have the time to talk about it. I want to, bring some of those to light. And that's something that you do quite a bit. So thanks for coming on today. I
appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
So, you're a businessman, former operator. What do you see going on in the world today? Like if you had to, if you were a doctor and you had to diagnose some symptoms, what would you say?
I think the first thing that you see more than anything is just everyone just follows and shares without any verification or like let me go check this. Is this really there's no fact finding, and I hate using that or fact checking because everything gets fact checked, but it's bullshit fact checking. Correct, right? Yeah. Like it's like, when I see a statistic pushed out or shared, my first thing is Google, and I look at it, and then I do my own research, and then it's like, well, that's not necessarily the whole picture, right? It's like, yes, there might be there might be 300 people a day dying from COVID or something like that, right? But like that might be the legitimate statistic, right? But like, then I'm like, wonder what the average person dying from being obese. And like you see that and it's like 100x more than what this thing is, but people are crying so much about this one thing. And I know that's it's kind of an easy topic right now because like we saw that for 2 years straight of just over and over and over again. And it's like all these mandates and all this stuff, but yet, you could drive down the street and you see lines wrapped around the corner of, McDonald's and Wendy's and all these other places. And these people are not going there and eating, like, do I go to fast food? Yes. Do I go to fast food a lot? Absolutely not. And when I go to fast food, like, I'm not getting the super sized, like, triple, decker thing. I'm getting like a salad or like a wrap, or even if I do get a burger, right? Like, I'm not crushing the fries with the 42-ounce, soda.
Right.
And it might be, I do that once a year or something like that, It's like, it just happened to be that I needed it, or there was nothing else around to do it, and I just did it, right? But it's not like a daily thing that I'm consuming 6,000 calories from McDonald's.
Sure, yeah.
So,
I mean, it's so, I guess the topic you're hitting on here is kind of how we consume information and then how we let it affect our lives, right? So we spend a lot of time on the surface, but there is some impediment to digging deeper for some reason, right? I don't know. So my premise is that, as is the case in other parts of society and Western culture in general, is that people have kind of tuned out of the process a little bit, right? And I think it's one of the things that's led us to where we are today. So the government of America was designed to be of, for, and by the people, right? So if that's the case, then the government is going to ultimately be a reflection of the people, regardless of good or bad. It's going to be a reflection of the people. And I think right now it's a reflection of how completely tuned out of the process we've been. Everybody wants iPads and Hot Pockets and to be left alone. And, from the left and the right, people seem to be content to bitch and moan about their rights. People talk about their rights a lot. Very rarely do you hear them talking about their responsibilities. And if you read the definition of citizen from any major law school or, Merriam-Webster itself, the definition of a citizen is, a person who has the rights and responsibilities, right, of citizenship in the country. So
yeah,
it's really easy just to, have a preformed opinion and say, anytime anybody's trying to improve, you can be a nihilistic, like, oh, well, you're not gonna, that's too big of a problem to solve. I'm like, all right, cool. Just shut the fuck up, man, because you've added absolutely nothing to this conversation. So, I think the stuff that we've been dealing with the last couple of years, like a great deal of the population being willing to accept such massive state influence on their day-to-day lives, things like that. I think that's the result of our complacency. And I think you see it in the same way that people just don't understand basic science and government these days. And those who do are either too busy, too nihilistic, or too afraid to step in and do something about it. And that's got to stop, right? I mean, if the government is of, for, and by the people, then it's only going to get better if we get better, which is, that sounds daunting, but it's actually good news. It means you have your own fate in your hand right now. So, I wonder, from your perspective, you're a father, you're a businessman, on a day-to-day basis, what are the steps that you kind of take to keep yourself involved in that process, to make sure you're studious, to make sure you're aware of what's going on around you, and to make sure you're doing the right thing?
Yeah, I mean, I going back to what we were just talking about, I do a lot of internal research for stuff. So, like, I'm not a big book reader. I never have been. Like, I don't like to sit down and consume a book. I get too bored with them. Typically, if I do listen to it, I'll listen to a book, but I listen to it at like 1.4 times, just because if it's not, then I get so fucking bored. Like, just get to the fucking point. Like, give me the cliff notes of it. Like, I don't need 30 page. I'll make fun of SEAL books. It's like every SEAL book you ever read, if you just go to the middle of the book and start there, you'll be good. The first part of it is all about buds and their hell week and all that stuff like that. It's like, nobody fucking cares. Like, just give me to like what the meat of, or whatever the book is about, it's like, but like, if I don't listen to them at that higher pace, then I tune them out. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm consuming a lot and educating myself a lot on different things. I've always enjoyed just learning, but I was never a good student in school, like, just regular like geometry or algebra or whatever, calculus or whatever. But like, you tell me a fact, and like, if I don't know anything about what you're talking about, then I'm going to go research it, and I'm going to start understanding a little bit about it. I would say, like, the one thing right now that I'm learning a lot about is baseball. My 9-year-old son, I have 4 kids. My 9-year-old son just started playing travel baseball.
Okay.
This spring. I was a swimmer. I played baseball and played, some pickup baseball, but like the amount of baseball that he just did in this spring, they played 35 games as a 9-year-old for travel baseball. But like, I became a student of baseball, and like, I'm like enjoying now, like, and as the algorithm with Facebook and Instagram, now I'm just getting more and more and more of it, but I'm enjoying it because he enjoys it. Right. So I'm learning things, and I want to be there to help him. I'll never be his coach. I'll never he's already a better baseball player than I ever was, but like he wants to go, at least right now, he's saying, I want to go play in the pros. Well, what I'm doing for that is I'm not pushing him to go do it, or pulling him to go do it. I'm giving him those opportunities. And it's, hey, I'm going to go work out. You want to come work out with me? Or, hey, I'm going to do this. Do you want to come do this with me? Or if I see him go in a couple weeks, usually not a couple weeks, but, a couple days, without, doing something baseball related, like, hey man, listen, like, I know it's off season right now, but this is where you gain,
right?
And this is where you grow as a player right now, right? Like, in the season, you can't change things, right? Like, that's not the time to. And I understand that from being a swimmer. Like, if I needed to correct something, I didn't do it in the middle of the season. That's the last thing you want to do. You bowl through that season, and then when you're in your off season and you're training, that's when you're going heavy on extra weights or refining your stroke or something like that. And so that's what I'm trying to, convey to him now, but also understanding he's 9, right? And like, there's 8 years before he even goes to college. So, I don't need to be sitting here and like, hey man, if you don't fucking do this, like, you're never going to fucking make it. Right. Like that, I'm also, are you having fun? Right. And he's like, yeah, I'm having fun. And then that's where I'm at. But, on a day-to-day basis, I work out generally every day. Or I definitely do something active, and it might not be like weights or something, I'll do some stretching, or I'll do, some walking or something. And then, 3 to 5 times a week, I'm doing a hard workout where I'm sweating and I'm getting a good, pump in. And then, like I said, educational part of it. I just love consuming information and learning about new things and bettering myself from that perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the preparation part and the way that you frame it is, it may sound like 2 different things. You creating good habits for yourself, whether it's working out, dieting, learning new stuff, reading, or, just being there for your kids on a regular basis and making time for that. Habit building is the same regardless of what you're doing, and it's effective regardless of what you're doing. And then the other part of it is you're talking about improving in the off season. The kid's now learning to think 4-dimensionally, right? So it's not just right now and the things that are going on around me right now. It's like the work, you make that causal link between the work I do now and the success I'll have later. I think it's a really important thing for people to understand, especially kids growing up, because, mostly they're just going to emulate whatever you do. So, that's a big responsibility in itself. But if you can give them if you can quantify the lessons, right, that they're learning at the lower level to bring them up a notch, now not only are they going to learn more lessons because they're more prepared, right, and they understand more, but they're also going to become leaders. Just by function of having those capabilities. And the thing about it is, it kind of sets, when they see you doing certain things and applying principles to it, and they're doing something entirely different, and you tell them to apply those same principles to that activity or discipline or whatever it is, then they begin to realize something that a lot of people today just don't understand, which is that it is the principle that matters, right? It's not the person. It's not the political party. It's not the team or whatever. It's the principle ultimately that matters. That is the North Star. And one of the things that I try to stress with people is whether you're in a management role or parenting, or whether you're in political debates or whatever it is, if you're trying to figure out what's best for your communities, you have to find the greatest common factor amongst your ideas. Like, if we take our two ideas and put them side by side and list all of their tenets, essentially, what are the things that we agree on about that? So, for example, the vast majority of people agree that we need internal security, that is policing. Even in underserved minority communities like Oakland, for example, did a poll in 2021, and 86% of people said they wanted the same amount or more police. And these are like completely black neighborhoods, right? Not so the idea that black people at large, particularly in these areas, want less police, we know that to be false. Now, the next step in that conversation, so we've established that the vast majority of people require and understand the need for internal security in a state. Now, to what level do we give the state authority? I think that the black dude in Oakland who has faced some nonsense, right, from shitty budgets that produce shitty recruiting, that produce shitty police, which produce shitty outcomes, and that's a real fucking thing that happens. I assume they have the same general opinion towards the state that a dude in fucking Appalachia does, or some most military people don't really care for that stuff either. So now we've agreed for the necessity of internal security, but also agreed that there has to be guardrails to keep the state from absorbing too much power and inflicting damage on the community. Those are the two main tenets of internal security, and everybody agrees on them. But for some reason, we're having these crazy debates about whether they should exist in their current form or not. You know what I mean? Because we've had the conversation incorrectly. Yeah. And just being able to take that simple thing you do, where you take the lessons that you learned in the Navy or as a businessman or in your own personal fitness or education, and applying those to micro skills for your child. That child has now learned how to have that conversation internally. And then the next step is obviously how to make them competent enough to have that conversation externally. Because now that's what turns them into a leader. And that brings us to...
Yeah, that's real quick. My oldest is 13. She just finished 7th grade. So I'm dealing with a middle school female right now. And I tell you, like, extremely difficult situation as a man having to communicate to, a teenager daughter at that, right? Like my son's a little bit different because I can, like, I know what he's going through, right? Like a girl, I have no idea, right? And then you add on all the other layers of what's going on in the world, where not only are they having to deal with just teenager stuff, puberty and everything else, now they have to figure out what, sexual orientation they are, and this and that, and all these other things that just like sit here, and it's like, you can't just have a simple conversation with them about like, hey, no, this is this. And it's like, well, but I have to talk to this person this way, and I have to talk to this person this way. And then next week they change, and now it's this and this and this. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus. Like,
yeah.
Well, but that conversation then comes back to the simple principles of, well, let's look at this whole picture. And we've had some, long heart to hearts. And then I do the same thing that I do for myself. I'm like, okay, I want you to go use your resources and go kind of put together like a little mini report, right? And then come back and let's have another conversation, right? And then what did you learn about this particular topic? You fill in the blank, right? And then we'll go and we'll talk about things, and then I'll ask her like, well, where did you get that information from, right? And it's like, we look at those things, and I explain to them, like with my 13-year-old, I'm having conversations with her like she's an adult, and I know for a fact that because I still treat her like a teenager, but I'm having conversations with her like an adult, right? And we have such a great relationship now. Like my whole goal right now is to just not fuck that up. It's like because she will come and tell me things that I know if I fuck this up, like that all goes away like that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like very personal information, things that she will come and talk to me about when no one else is around. And I'm like, really like, okay, please don't, please don't fuck this up. Like I have to tread very carefully on it, but like, it's awesome because I have that relationship with her. And like I said, it just constantly trying not to screw that whole thing up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so what you're talking about with sending the kid out to, I guess for lack of a better phrase, do their own research, that's really what education is supposed to be. So you learn like core information, you learn about history, you learn about how government works, you learn about basic science and math and stuff like that. But high school and especially university is primarily designed to teach you how to use resources to find information. Like that's what, because you can't learn everything about being whatever you major in 120 credit hours. That's an unreasonable expectation to have. But you can learn enough to know where to look for the information that you're missing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it also teaches people how to think for themselves, right? Like if you have to go out and find your own information, then you're no longer relying on, and look, there's a point in your life where you realize that everybody who's delivering information to you on a personal level has some kind of angle or bias, and you can Kentucky windage that shit and kind of figure out what the truth is. But that doesn't happen until you're probably in your mid to late 20s, if you're lucky. If you're a normal person, it's probably in your 30s when you start to be able to do that. So teaching people how to think like that at a younger age, not only does that inoculate them from bad and ignorant influences, right, that might have half-truths packaged in real truths, and it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. It also means more people in our communities are thinking proactively and creatively about solving problems. And there's always going to be problems that need to be solved. So that means we solve more problems and we solve problems faster, which, that's the kind of shit that it doesn't just benefit society in a loose way. It literally saves people's lives very frequently. Like, inoculations, like the polio vaccine, for example, who, by the way, Jonas Salk just gave it away. didn't make billions of dollars on that one. So anyways, yeah, all this is leading into the first point you chose today. And it's, I one of the reasons I wanted to have you come on is because you've been in leadership positions before. You're a business owner, but also as a parent. So you've got some perspective on what it is like to be, you know, in extreme situations as an adult and in less extreme situations, or deal with less extreme situations in adolescence in today's world. So principle 4 is no matter where I am, I'll be a leader. And as a leader, I'll last. The first part of that statement I added after the fact because I didn't want to assume that everybody isn't a leader, because people don't think of themselves that way. Because, you know, the vast majority of people, I say this a lot, but the vast majority of people won't ever be in a formal leadership position during their lifetime, at least for not any significant amount of time. They may be in charge of a project for a couple of weeks, or they may be the hall monitor for one day or something like that. But the vast majority of people just aren't going to be in these situations. But leadership isn't about a title, right?
Well, also, I mean, you know, even if you are given, like you said, a hall monitor, right? And you're quote unquote supposed to be a leader, right? You might not have the authorization to really lead that hallway, right? You know, and it's like, and we all saw it, right? Like, you know, I mean, especially in the military, you see it, but you see it all the time anywhere you go, right? Like you might be the CEO of a company, but you're tied to a board who they're really making the decisions, and you're just carrying out those decisions, right? Like, yes, you are the leader of the company, but that board is directing you exactly which way you need to go. And if you go outside of their left and right limits that they tell you, you're getting replaced, right? Like if you don't conform to that, you know, their path that they're setting, you're gone. Yep. And, you know, so kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier is that just that the responsibility part of it, but also, you know, you said just a minute ago, the title, right? So it's not a title, even though people hang their hat on, well, my title is, you know, CEO, so I'm a leader, right? Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. So that's kind of the inverse of my point. So you can be in a leadership position and not actually be a leader, but that's even in that situation where you're I mean, I don't want to say a puppet, because that's, you know, the boards of companies have quite a bit of control for good reason, right? I mean, it's there's a reason for that a lot of times, but if you want to be successful in that position, and you want to be a leader in the CEO position, even if you have a board that may micromanage a little bit, you can still control your attitude and effort. I mean, if you're a miser, you know, if you're just miserable all the time and you're delivering the board's message to the company half-assed, then it's going to come across half-assed, and the performance will be half-assed, and the results will be half-assed, right? So
no doubt.
And then the other side of that I was the reason I added that part in the beginning is because of the inverse of what you were saying, which is that even if you're not in a formal leadership position, everybody likes to say somebody has to do something. Well, you're somebody, you know what I mean? So, and it doesn't have to be a huge monumental lift every single day, but if you have the ability to be self-aware, then you have a responsibility to, you know, to set a good example for other people, I guess is a good way to say that. Because as you know, from being on the teams, probably more so actually from going through buds, because psychology is like super contagious. Everybody's thinking about quitting, and one guy quits and then another guy quits, and it's like poison, right? But it also works in the opposite direction. Somebody looks like they're about to quit and they fucking nut up and don't quit, and you don't quit. You know what I mean? Now we have those opportunities every single day to be leaders. It doesn't matter if you're 13 or if you're, you know, 50 years old. It doesn't matter. You have opportunities every day. So you've talked about your kids a little bit. I wonder, we spend a lot of time talking about leadership and formal leadership positions, and you and I have been in quite a few of those over the years. but I want to talk about regular people, whether it's a kid in middle or high school or, just some dude that works in a cubicle and he's 45 years old. What's that person doing to be a leader? Because that's the whole point of this citizen idea, is that, again, of, for, and by the people means that we're going to get the government that we pay for through our own effort and attitude. So what does that mean to you? Like, how does the average person, become a leader in whatever situation they're in? Or I guess, how do they exercise leadership qualities might be a better way to say that.
Sure. Yeah. So an example of, something that, going back to the baseball thing with my son. So this last year, again, they're 9 years old. Some of them are even 8. So it's a 9U team. So they're 8 and 9. We had 3 kids on the team that played 8 years old the whole spring season. And they'd make a bad play, and they're immediately down, and it's like, dude, like there's still so much baseball left. Plus, like I said, they played 35 games, and it's like it happens. Even pros make, but it's what happens next, and it's like it's how you come back from that is really what makes a good baseball player, right? Because you're gonna make mistakes, right? Like you're gonna strike out. Right. Like,
yeah. Well, especially in baseball, you're a Hall of Famer if you succeed 3 out of 10 times. So
exactly. So, but, about halfway through this season, and I was kind of like talking with my son about it, in the dugout, like every kid looked up to Tyler. Like, it didn't matter if Tyler shaved his head, everyone else wanted to shave his head. Like, cause they were like, and multiple parents kept on saying, like, my kid just really watches everything that Tyler does. If Tyler's swinging a different bat or a different way, like, they're watching him. And so I just kept reiterating to him, like, hey man, like, you're a leader on this team, even though you don't like necessarily like have that position or that title. Like, everyone's looking at you as a leader on this team. And I said, and your attitude in that dugout can completely change everyone else's attitude in that dugout. And I was like, if you come in and after you strike out and you mope, which I've told him multiple times, like I'm just impressed as shit as like I would be snapping a bat across my knee because I was so pissed off, but like he didn't. And, he's like, okay, yeah, and but he could figure a way to channel it. And I'll tell you another story in a minute. But like, he would come into the dugout, or a kid would come in the dugout just pissed off, and other kids wouldn't say shit to this other kid, right. And you'd see the kid just moping. But Tyler would make an effort, and he really started doing this, like I said, about halfway through the season. Would make an effort, go over to him, and just like say, hey man, some type of words of encouragement, like, hey, we'll get him next time. Don't worry about it. Like, hey, you may have struck out, but the next kid just hit a 2-run, a double or something like that. And you saw that other kid get over his situation almost instantaneous, and it's like watching that happen to him, and it gave me goosebumps to watch, obviously, as a dad, to see like your son, like, in that situation, have that impact on his peers, even though they're all equals, they're all 8, 9U baseball players.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting. So why do you think it is that he's like that? Just out of curiosity. I have a 2-part question here. One, is he far and away better than everybody else on the team and they respect him because of that? Or do you think it's more of his presence and attitude? Because I played on those traveling teams too. And they're like, it's rare that every now and again you'll see a team where one kid is way better than everybody else, but everybody there is really good. Right.
Yeah. So, he is good. He led the team in hitting and strikeouts. But I wouldn't say like, and as you know, right, like that that could happen. That can switch tomorrow, and the next kid is right in that position. So, I know that, I know there's some of that he does, but also I think that I watched him do this multiple times where he would make a mistake and he knew it was a mistake, right? Like he would make a mistake and rather than, mope or cry, like he channeled all of that like negative energy into the next play and just made it even better. And I was going to mention this earlier, but it was like almost like one of our last games, and it was actually his last inning that he got to pitch. We were really close game. He pitched one, and the kid hit like this tiny little dribbler. We had a base runner on first and third, and it was 2 outs. And so he ran up, grabbed the ball, and instead of throwing it to first to get the easy out, he threw it home. And our catcher wasn't expecting it, and he was off of. He assumed he was just going to home with, or to go to first with it.
Right.
And the catcher wasn't expecting it and was out of position, caught the ball, but the kid scored. And I saw my son just literally like just obviously get pissed, right? His next 3 pitches were the hardest I've ever seen. And even like this coach was like, there's not a kid in Hampton Roads that could hit that kid. Like, I got to figure out how to piss him off because I just saw something that no 9-year-old kid would have been able to hit. And I mean, he threw 3 just incredible pitches that were, I mean, they were fastballs. I mean, he doesn't know any other pitch right now, but I mean, he threw them so hard and perfect that the kid just stared at it. It was just like, I can't hit this. But where I think that just maturity that I saw from that was just so motivating. And I told him afterwards, I was like, man, like to watch you channel that and do it in a manner that you didn't melt on the mound and give up 6 more runs because you just gave up an easy out, which you've done that play, you could do that play 10 out of 10 times. And this one time you just screwed it up. But I think that going back to your question of why he's like that. Yes, he is a leader on the team because he's good. He works hard. He does every morning before school, during the school year. I mean, he was doing drills, he was hitting balls, he was, doing baseball drills every morning before school. And I mean, people would ask him like, hey, what are you doing? And he would tell them, and they're just like, oh, well, I don't do anything in between practice, and it's like, so he had that just extra level of dedication. He's a good ball player, but he is encouraging others. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things like that.
Yeah, but there's certainly there's a lot of really good baseball players, even at the major league level, that are exceptional at the game, but not exactly great leaders, right?
Yep.
So it's very common. This is a lesson that people can learn, whether you're military first responder or whether you're if you're in a work situation where there are project managers and stuff like that. If this is particularly salient when you become a manager yourself and you start assigning tasks to people, it's not always your best performer at a specific task that's the real leader. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the person's got to be competent to some degree, but if we talk about core competencies a lot in leadership, you know what I mean? So do I really want to take my best, my person that's best at performing this task and then saddle them with leadership responsibilities when that's not really their best trait? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, to the other point, there's 2 things here about just his general attitude, and I think it's something that we need to teach kids more. You say he channels the anger and frustration well, not only in his personal efforts, but also when somebody else is upset at their own performance. That's a very emotionally mature 9-year-old. I couldn't do that at any point in my baseball playing career. Not for myself. I could for other people, but not myself.
And that's what I mean. And I've told him that, right? I was like, man, me as a 9-year-old, like I couldn't do what you do with that. Like I was like, I that really is impressive to watch you do that, because I wasn't. I was, like I said, I would have been the one. I would have snapped the bat across, or if I was on the mound pitching, I would have just shit the bed on there, and then probably would have given up 6 runs. You know, like when it was 2 outs and it should have been an easy out, because, you know, but it is neat to see, you know, that level like that, where you can see that his leadership is coming out on that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things I like to say is, if you can inhale rage and exhale purpose, you can move a fucking mountain. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
But you can, you know, if you inhale and exhale rage, then you're not going to get very far like that.
Stand by.
But the other part of it is where he's going up to other kids. This is something that people reach out to me on a pretty regular basis, especially since I started this show, and will tell me stories about, I saw this person that needed help today, so I went out of my way to help them. Or I saw some garbage on the ground and I picked it up. I'm like, sweet. Now, next time, do it when there's other people around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And say, hey, let's pick up this garbage, or hey, let's go help this person out. Now there's 2 of you. You know what I mean? And you do that one more time, and you got 3, and that's a fucking fire team, you know? So, searching out conflict and discomfort in order to repair and improve the situation is something that used to be the norm. Like if your neighbor needed help, you helped them. You didn't shy away. If somebody fell down, you didn't look the other way because you were embarrassed for them. You went over there and fucking helped them get up. You know what I mean? And now we don't really do that much. So, and it's not very hard to train people to do that. Once you kind of get in the habit of you'll be mid-conversation, something will happen and you'll help fix the situation and maybe not even break the conversation you're in. It just becomes second nature for you to assist in that. And I think that's a really important thing. I think that might be the most important part of training young leaders, is teaching them to seek out the conflict and discomfort and not be afraid of it.
Yeah, you know, I read listened to. I still say I read a book, even though I listened to it. Inner Voice. I don't know who the author is, but it talked a lot about how, you know, we always battle these inner voices in our head, and you know, it could be for good or evil, right? I mean, like, we all hear that, you know, we all know that, but like, if you just act when your inner voice tells you to do something, generally speaking, it's telling you to do good things, right? And to your point, when people will tell you, like, you know, hey, pick up that trash or do stuff like that, right? Like, I've had multiple times where I don't act on that, and you never know what that outcome ever comes out to be, right? But you're just carrying on your day, right? But there's other times when I've like really focused on listening to what that inner voice says, and then I act on it, and they're little things. And it's like, one example was, we were buying gift cards. It was like a holiday season. We were buying gift cards for all of our employees. And I thought I needed, for some reason, I had a number in my head of how many I needed to buy. And then when I was sitting there checking out, I was like, I needed 2 more. And I was like, I don't know why I need 2 more. All right, I'll just buy 2 more, whatever. And so I bought 2 more, and I was like, okay. And leaving out of this parking lot, I should have gone north, but for whatever reason, I went east, which was out of my way and would have taken me a different route to get to work. I went east, and I pulled out of the thing, and I started going. And as I was there is a homeless guy there who, in like this shopping area, we don't ever have like homeless people around there. And I was like, that's so weird. Like you never really see someone. And I handed him the gift card and I was just like, hey man, I hope this helps out this, holiday season or whatever. And then I went on, and then I was like, man, that's so weird. Like if I would have just gone north, like I would, like the exit towards the street that I needed to get to was easier to go this way than this way. And then because I was on this route to my work, I got to another area and I was like, you got to be shitting me. It's like another homeless person there. I'm like this. And same thing. I handed him the I think it was a lady. I don't remember. I handed the person the gift card and drove on to work. But it was, if I would have just not done that, I wouldn't have seen those and probably just had 2 extra gift cards for no other reason. But like all of those things happened just because I listened to that inner voice tell me, and I didn't just listen to it, I acted on it.
Right.
And I thought that was something really, really interesting. And it's a good book if you never read it. It's
find out what the actual name is and shoot it over to me.
Yeah.
But it's I talk about that a lot too. It's like be on the lookout for that kind of stuff. If you pay attention, one, it'll train the way you think, right? Because it's social reward basically, right? So it's a dopamine hit. And it does, I don't mean to take the wind out of our collective sails by explaining the physiological process that led to that, but it's really important to understand it because it tells you how the habit building process works. Like you can get dopamine hits from sugary drinks or from smoking cigarettes or from doing stupid shit, whatever it is, or you can get dopamine hits from, hey, I helped that dude today. Right? Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can stop you from doing something every day like that. If you pay attention, opportunities to help people will find you on a routine basis, whether it makes sense to you or not in the moment. And it also trains over time, and it doesn't take very long to do it. Over time, it trains your brain to be on the lookout for that stuff. So like in your case, in this situation, there's not necessarily any rational thought process that went into all that. It just kind of happened, but it happened because you were ready for it to happen. You were prepared to act on it. You know what I mean? I think that's a really important part because people, it's really easy to get frustrated and disillusioned and ultimately nihilistic about how fucked up life can be. You know what I mean? Especially when you have high hopes, when you're, if you're like as somebody that's super patriotic and you see the current state of the country, it can be very depressing. But if you allow that to stop you from doing the right thing, then it's only going to get worse. You know what I mean? Like it's no politicians coming to save us, no fucking billionaires coming to save us, no political revolutionary or philosophers coming to save us. You do it every day with your own actions. That's how it works. And then the collective effort from all of us, at the lower level, the citizen, that's what builds greatness. It's not great leaders or whatever. It never works top down like that.
Yeah. When I know like something that so I went officer, and something that I get asked is, if I could do it again, would I go back and be enlisted? And my answer is no. Right. Like, and not that I don't respect what enlisted guys do, and it's actually the complete opposite, right? But I've always been a person to look at moving forward, right? Like even if I could go back in time and reset the clock, I loved everything that I got to do as an officer and what I got to do in the teams, right? Like, could it have been different or could it have been better? Yeah, maybe. But like, I'm not willing to go back to then try to rewrite history and do something different. And it could also have been worse, right? Like, I don't know, like all of my deployments and I don't get to go to combat or I don't get to go to do these things. And I'm sitting here training somebody, right? Like where I got to do all this other cool stuff because I was an officer. And in some cases I got to do positions that were way above my experience, but they needed an officer to go do those. Right. And it's like, I need an officer coverage to go, sit in this position, and you're going to be answering to a 4-star general. But at the end of the day, I also knew that the chief or senior chief that was with me was really the person who's in charge doing like the tactical stuff. And I'm there just as like ass cover to make sure that, like there's an officer there that if the general needs to talk to me, he can talk to me type thing. Right. Sure, yeah. And as dumb as that sounds, right, there is that world in there where but I got to do those things. And I mean, going through divorce and all these other things like that, I wouldn't go back and change anything because the outcome could be different than what it is today. And I've learned so much from my experience, and I'm going to take that as a learning and move forward and figure out how to hopefully never make that mistake again. But even if I do, hopefully it doesn't last as long as the previous time, for example. Right. But I am constantly telling my kids that, I live by that, I do 100%, that I believe that, things happen because of us, and people think that there's all these little cliche sayings and different things like that. I do believe that. I do believe in, a God and things. But I believe that your actions and what you do are 100% a reflection of who you are. Sure. Right. And nothing should be given to you just because I'm Sean Matson, right? Or, you're a former Navy SEAL or whatever. Like, no, like I got this because of my hard work and efforts and everything that I've done. And I've failed plenty of times, right? Just like you, right? Like, but then you figure out how to hopefully fail less and also maybe make those failures, not last as long.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Teachable moments, I guess. Or, there's a lot of those.
Here's a funny one. So actually in a eval, I'll make fun of myself again. In one of my evals, I wrote up that, like you have in your eval, like block, you have like the couple, like, you have to put like a little like catchy phrase and then you put a couple sentences of bullshit.
You're talking about your OER?
Put teachable. Yeah. And so I was a teachable student and my commander was like, he's like, dude, you're an idiot.
That's a very diplomatic way to say you fuck up a lot.
Yeah. He was like, like, we got to figure out a better way to say it. Like, I'm not putting that you're a teachable student. I was like, but I feel like that's what I am. And he was just like, no, like, that's horrible.
When you're an 003 in a SEAL team, you probably should put something else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
He still will shoot me a text message. He's like, how's my teachable student? I'm like, I'm crushing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, to that. So we talked a lot about leadership today from, our own experience, running and gunning and business and all the way back to childhood. Before we get out of here, I want to talk about this other principle you chose, which is I will live a life worth dying for. We've gotten a lot of different responses to what that means to people. I'm curious what it means to you.
For me, I mean, obviously in the military, there was a whole different reason for if I did die, right? Like, and I know for a fact in multiple occasions for missions and things like that, it was kind of like, I mean, if it happens, it happens. Like I'm going with, my best buddies, and I know I'm doing something that, hopefully leaves an impact for future generations and stuff like that. So I'm willing to accept that. Now, for me, my whole reason for what I do and things like that. And I know we talked about it probably on Drinking Bros and other stuff before, but like for me, I have three things that I make every decision on, damn near every decision on. And it's my family and my work and my working out. And those three things, like my work, I want my work to make an impact. And I feel like we do make an impact with what we do. For my working out, I hope I inspire other people to want to work out, do better themselves, right? Like, you know, to live that lifestyle like that. And then for my family, you know, to what we talked about earlier, is I want to lead them to be the best versions of themselves. You know, I don't care if my son quits baseball tomorrow and becomes, you know, a ballet dancer, right? I hope he's the best fucking ballet dancer in the world, right? And goes and wins, you know, competitions, if that's what he loves to do. Right. And that's what I want to do for my family. And I know that right now I'm doing that, and I'm okay saying that if I died tomorrow, that is what is going to be on my tombstone. And then that's what people are going to remember me for. It, you know, it's not that, you know, Sean was a funny guy, even though I am a really funny guy, but, you know, that's why I know that, you know, the life that I'm living and the life that I'm going to continue to live is worth dying for at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, what you're talking about is you're just defining your purpose in life as you see it. Like that's what, so you want to make sure that the things that you're doing in your life are worthy of, you know, your eventual death, I guess. We've had people say, I mean, a lot of people have commented a lot of different things on this. You know, Baker Levitt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Baker said that he thinks about what he's doing right now, and then he imagines himself as an old man on his deathbed and thinks, like, would this be, if I was on my deathbed, would I look back on this moment and make the same decision? I think that's a good way to frame it. Other people have said, other people have made, you know, the first point you made, which is like, this is a noble cause worth dying for. I'm over here fighting. It's a lot easier to answer that question when you frame it in terms of war, because the consequences are very obvious, right? But the
100%.
The other 40 to 50 years of life you're going to live after that it's a lot more nebulous, I guess. I mean, a lot of different things can happen. We settle into comfort and we accept things that if we really were able to conceptualize how limited our time was, we would certainly make different decisions. So I think it's good that you've boiled them down to the three core things for you.
And on that, right? Like, I mean, I schedule a lot of different things. I schedule my workouts. I schedule dates with my wife. I schedule time with my kids. And it's so that I'm intentional with that, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, I look at my schedule and it's just it's empty. It also doesn't have to be like, people are like, oh my gosh, that would get annoying to know that, you know, you have to have this regimen. Well, but the beauty of it is like, if I have scheduled time with, you know, my wife for a date or something like that, life is going to fucking happen, right? Yeah. Like, we've had multiple times where we've scheduled a date and then one of our kids gets sick and we can't go on the date. Sure. Right. Well, we take that block and then I just move it into another time and say, hey, we'll just go do this time. And then I'm like, oh, well, now I've got this. Okay, what do we want to do now? Now it's either go find something else to do or fill it with, you know, one of the other things that I can move around. But like, you're not in a state of like chaos then, right? Like, right. It's like, it's okay. Right. Like, I know I operate better knowing that. And then it also allows me to be extremely intentional with and whom I give time to, right? Like, there are times when like people are like, hey, can I get a call with you? And I'll go to my calendar before, like, I send them like my link to my calendar and I'll like block off time because I don't want to talk to them this week or whatever. And I'm
Right,
like, no, I don't have, but they don't know that. They'll schedule and be like, oh, the earliest time you have is in 2 weeks. Well, sorry, buddy. That's the earliest time I got.
Yeah. Well, now they know.
But I'll do it. Yeah. Now they know. I only do that for Ross. So,
well, I do it too, and I see him every day. I mean, it's, we do a lot of different types of stuff. Like I write a lot, and I've got to be in a certain headspace to do that. So, that's a part of my day that's blocked off from everybody, including like my family, right? Like, of course things are going to happen that interrupt that sometimes, but the other side of that is getting buy-in from the other people involved, your family, your business partners, or whatever. And frankly, if you don't have that kind of purpose and intentionality, people are going to assume that you take the other stuff seriously, but not them and their feelings, right? And it's just, sometimes I guess that could be true for some people, but it's typically not the case. We just don't do a very good job of articulating that. I think people that have high tempo, business careers don't do a very good job of separating that and life. Cause it's, especially these days in the digital age, when you can operate a business from anywhere in the world on your phone, I feel myself working too much almost every single day. And, 100%. All things being equal, if I feel okay and I don't have anything else to do, I'm just going to keep doing it, because why wouldn't I? Yeah. Like but there is some level of intentionality. Like if you want to, you can't take any of that wealth with you. And, we've seen the dangers of making your family and ancestors extremely rich without teaching them actual principles on how to live a good life. Those people end up pieces of shit, like 100% of the time. You don't see anybody that's like third generation rich that didn't have some kind of like extreme circumstance, or their parents were exceptional, that turns out to be a good human being. As a matter of fact, over the last 10 years, we've coined the phrase affluenza in this country, which is somebody who was too rich to learn how to be a good person, so they can get away with crimes now. You know what I mean? But it sounds absurd, but it's a real thing that's going on. So, I struggle with that too. Just like the material stuff. I don't really care about the material stuff. It's more about the goals for me. But you do have to, like when you talk about living a life worth dying for, how do you quantify it? You know what I mean? Do you quantify it in your success in business and the amount of shit you accumulate or money you accumulate or even experiences you have? Or is there something greater? And I think, it comes back to the family. We had 7 of 4, 7 of 3 project. Chad, right? He's a fucking lunatic.
Yeah, I know Chad, right?
Yeah, right. He's an absolute.
I know what we're talking about.
He's an absolute lunatic. He was on Drinking Bros about 2 months ago, and he made the point that the smallest form of government is the family, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the most overlooked one. So I think that you could take a sample from any point in modern Western history and examine the average person's family life and how solidified and healthy that situation is, and you'll be able to tell exactly how the government and their country is being run at the time. I really do think that there's a correlation between those two things. So, if you've got to add fucking bookmarks on your calendar to make sure that shit's getting done, you better do it. You know what I mean? Like you got to do whatever it is you got to do to make sure that shit happens, I guess is the point.
Well, and anytime you have that, if you have that structure, like I said, anytime anything goes, when life happens, right? It no longer becomes a chaotic moment where you see people melt down in front of your face, right? Like, it's like, no, it's okay. We can just move this, do this, and we're off and we're good again, right? Mm-hmm. Like the world's back to normal.
I tell people that all the time. Like when they watch us in shoot houses and stuff, and wonder like, how did you react so quickly to that? Because I was thinking about that like 30 seconds before it happened. I was already picturing in my mind making that turn and taking that shot. You know what I mean? But I was also imagining 3 or 4 other things. Now that's an extremely, that is a very extreme situation, right? That's different than what most people are going to face in their lives. But if you've got, if you're thinking about second and third order effects and you're planning, you know what I mean? It makes a big difference. It makes you seem more competent than you really are, to be honest, because you're able to flex so quickly. And these days, the way everything's going, the way how quickly things change, not just in business, but in culture and society, being able to like resilience and being able to flex quickly and pivot, super good skills to have.
Yeah. When you talk about those things, right? It's also when you talk about the pivot aspect of it, it's not every great idea is something that you're going to be willing to take to the grave, right? Like, right. It's like, I'm going to retire on this. Like, well, you got to also know when they're like, hey, listen, like this is run its course, and it's time to leave, and I'm trying to go on and move on and go do something else. And while it could be painful to restart something, right, it might be better for everybody if that just happens, and just observing it, seeing it, and then just acting on it and saying, okay, let's move on.
Yep.
And not being afraid that your world's going to come crashing down.
Sure. And don't fall into the spent cost fallacy trap either, which is, I put so much effort into this, I can't stop now. Well, that's not really a smart way to think about it. Like that's one factor. Certainly one factor is how much you've invested, but if it's clearly going to fail, investing more, you may as well set your time and money on fire. You know what I mean? Well,
I'm driving. I'm gonna hit this. I'm gonna hit this pillar. I'm too close now. I can't hit the brakes. I'm just gonna hit it at 100 rather than 80.
It's dumb. So thanks for coming today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with people before we get out of here?
No, I just appreciate the time, Dan. Good talking with you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming out. And really interesting conversation. I always like talking about leadership, especially with people who, have experienced it in multiple phases of life, from, the military or first responder, or even athletics in college or whatever it is, to, business, then to being parents and stuff like that. It's the interesting thing about it to me is that you find the exact same lessons at every single level. So we think
100%.
We are leaders now, and we wonder how to teach our kids to be leaders, and we can't figure it out. Well, just teach them the exact shit that man. Like, it's not going to change. Leadership is not going to change between now and whenever. No. So, thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate it. Everybody go check out Sean Matson, check out Carter Max and Matt Bach and everything else he's got going on. Thank you for listening. This has been Citizen.